My Hero Academia continues to produce amazing, well-drawn chapters, and this week is no different. We do get an update on Bakugo's condition. The wait has been excruciating. Unfortunately though, it still appears the villains have the upper hand. With all that being said, let's dive into chapter 363 of My Hero Academia titled Protectors and Invaders. We continue where we last left off. Bakugo is lying on the ground, motionless and covered in blood. Best Jeanist is hovering over him, no doubt deeply distraught and horrified considering what Bakugo went through in the last chapter. And this is alongside this flavor text that reads, Bakugo has fallen. Beginning the chapter like this makes me believe Bakugo may genuinely stay dead. And if so, Horikoshi will really be subverting a lot of fan expectations. That being said, the narrative then transitions to Monoma as he has a flashback. But before we dive into the flashback, I'd just like to point out that Monoma is still using Erasure. All he can do in this fight is sit back and watch because he is the only thing keeping everyone from instantly dying. He thinks back to what Bakugo said during the joint training exercise. Of course, it is the comment Bakugo made about victory that he win every time with no casualties. It's a statement that goes back to the theme of winning to save and saving to win. But regardless of the connotation, it is a bit of an ironic statement, given Bakugo's current status. Once the flashback ends, Monoma continues to look on in horror. He remarks that this can't be real. His face is uncharacteristically contorted into a pained expression. Truthfully, seeing even Monoma this distraught really brings home how badly the heroes need a win right now. Monoma even exclaims, Bakugo can't go and die like this. Again, it just goes back to how shocking this really is. It is practically unbelievable. Bakugo, like Deku, seemed untouchable. That is, at least as far as plot armor goes, yet this chapter only serves to remind us that he isn't. We even get a close-up of bloody Bakugo that just furthers this point. All the while, Shigaraki is in front of them with a massive wave of fingers behind. It is a perfect shot that shows the extent of Shigaraki's current mutation. We know he is controlling the battlefield. However, I must say this panel reminds me of Shigaraki's decay wave from the last war arc. The flesh behind him is chaotic and seems to only be spreading, just like his decay quirk. Even without his cataclysmic ability, Shigaraki can still wreak havoc. This scene makes me not only wonder how Deku will prevail, but how anyone could close in on Shigaraki. He has enough mutated flesh to literally cocoon himself from harm at this point. Either way, we also get a close-up of Best Jeanist. All that can be seen are his eyes, but that's enough to see how distressed he is. His first concern right now is Bakugo, despite the fact we see Jeanist is injured too. It looks as if blood is dripping from his mouth. It's likely he is facing drawbacks from having one lung. Finally though, we have confirmation on Bakugo's status, at least for now. It has been such a nerve-wracking wait, but Best Jeanist does reveal that Bakugo has no pulse, and that his heart has been obliterated. This feels like such a definite death. Regardless, only time will tell if this sticks. And I'm sure the Bakugo fans are hoping that it doesn't. After this shocking information, Mirko falls to his knees. Just like Best Jeanist and Monoma, his face is wrought with regret. He thinks back to his original goal to keep everyone alive until Deku showed up. He is seemingly cursing himself for being unable to keep that promise. While this may not be the most actiony chapter, it certainly has emotions running high. Everyone on the battlefield is affected by Bakugo's current situation, which is something Shigaraki takes advantage of. He gloats that Bakugo is staying dead, and this tragedy is the hero's fault. Specifically, he is addressing Aizawa. It only feels fitting he's trashing Aizawa. We have had multiple moments of Shigaraki being an Eraserhead fan. He also strikes a pose, which reminds me of Shigaraki's dramatic flair from the last war. Aizawa himself is also stricken with guilt. Besides Best Jeanist, he is the one person who is affected by this the most. Bakugo is his student, and Aizawa wanted nothing more than to protect his wards. That aside, the idea that the heroes caused this by putting such a heavy responsibility on Bakugo only mirrors Deku in One for All. While Shigaraki's gloating adds insult to injury, it doesn't stop the heroes. Mirko is rushing towards him, while Jeanist is using his quirk on Bakugo. I'm really hoping we see what Jeanist is doing soon. Meanwhile, Netere is too exhausted to continue fighting, and Tamaki is throwing up blood. It's clear his cannon attack from the last chapter is taking a toll on his body. Unfortunately though, the hero's willpower may not be enough. However, we are treated to a wonderful 2-page spread. Shigaraki catches Mirko in his mutated grasp, asking who wants to be another welcoming present for Deku. Shigaraki wants to not only physically destroy Deku, but ruin his psyche as well. This final fight will no doubt boil down to a battle of the mind and body. But let's focus on the current events rather than the future. Shigaraki harshly rips off Mirko's prosthetic arm. Mirko herself is defiantly biting Shigaraki's fingers, all while blaming herself for the dire situation. The bunny hero says that if she had simply been faster and killed Shigaraki during the last war, they wouldn't be in this situation. All the while, we can see how determined she is despite being practically crushed by Shigaraki's hands. Blood on her face and prosthetic, she is no doubt in pain. But regardless of that, she continues to stand up to Shigaraki by biting him. Even her expression is crazed and stubborn. But if Deku doesn't arrive soon, we may see more than just Bakugo die on this battlefield. Shigaraki, on the other hand, pun intended, continues to rub salt into the hero's wounds. He refers to Mirko by her full name, of course on account of the all-for-one within him, and tells her not to blame herself because their failure wasn't just due to her. That other heroes during the last war dropped the ball too. Shigaraki also points out that because so many heroes retired after the war, it left the heroes no choice but to bring child heroes to the front lines. Therefore, to Shigaraki, it is only natural some of the more inexperienced younger heroes would die. And to be fair, he's not wrong. However, what choice did the heroes really have? Shigaraki then goes on to say that the heroes did throw everything they had, even getting children into the fight. Yet the heroes lacked preparation and numbers. Simply put, Shigaraki states that they were going to lose no matter what. This fight has been nothing but bleak. But before we can even digest what may happen, the perspective changes to Todoroki and Ida at Kamino. Both heroes look on in shock and terror as Onima, an Endeavor sidekick, is burnt alive by a renewed Dabi. His flames are hot enough that it even engulfs the buildings in Kamino. Burnin appears to be the only Endeavor sidekick unaffected by the heat. She tells both young heroes to run away. Dabi's firepower is now enough that heroes who have been resistance like Burnin and Onima are simply overwhelmed. While in a bundle of fire with no skin left to be seen, Dabi remarks that fighting Shoto first was for the best. He goes on to say that now he's got a real understanding of his quirk, that he copied Shoto's move, Flash Fire Fist, Phosphorus. The Dabi and Shoto fight was several chapters ago, so here's a quick recap on it. It combines Endeavor's Flash Fire with Shoto's own Phosphorus technique, which requires not only intense focus, but Shoto's half hot, half cold quirk. He circulates both sides through his body in order to create a cold fire. What's interesting is that Dabi appears to have been able to replicate this despite having only a fire quirk. In fact, Dabi himself states that he only copied this move because it was a last-ditch effort. I believe Dabi would have a comeback, but I didn't expect such a massive power-up. Either way, we do get a beautiful full page of Dabi in all his fiery glory. He is seen grabbing Onima, continuing to practically incinerate him. Something tells me the flaming sidekicks won't make it out. Dabi delights in all of this, telling his brother it is a decent copy. And truly, these words don't do justice for what Dabi has recreated. Sadly, this spike in literal firepower has its own drawbacks. Dabi is a dead man walking. He looks like a skeleton more than ever before. His own flesh has been burned away, his arms and face are nothing more than bones. Dabi truly looks like a monster. And to top off this dramatic appearance, across Dabi's chest is a flaming X, just like Shoto and Endeavor's. It is a fitting symbol. Dabi is truly ascended to the lights with his brother and father. Instead of fleeing as instructed, Shoto calls out to Onima and realizes that Dabi has more than just his destructive quirk going for him. His older brother not only honed his own power by himself, but Dabi has an insane battle sense and a strong will. He is this disastrous package of willpower, firepower, and strategy. It's gonna take more than Shoto's flames and Ida's engines to stop Dabi. The cremation villain then shouts for Skeptic. We see Inomu is fitted to act as Skeptic's mic as he tells Dabi he has no time for the villain's family drama. Finally, a semblance of comedy in this cluster of tragedy. Plus, it is interesting to see the villains also have a communication system themselves. Though Skeptic does inform Dabi where Endeavor is and who he is currently fighting. Does this mean we'll see Dabi in All for One versus Endeavor and Shoto? I sure hope so. Either way, we get more of a close-up of Dabi's current state. Steam is radiating off of his body. He is being burned by not just flames, but the steam his body is releasing. If you could properly feel it, I'm sure the pain he is in would be beyond excruciating. And while we don't fully go back to the Shigaraki fight, we do get some choice words from him. He states that the heroes shouldn't have given the villains time to prepare. In his mind, Deku had the right idea to rush and try bringing the fight to them. This simply shows that Shigaraki knew Deku wanted to bring him out. If anything, this entire confrontation has been beneficial to the villains. That being said, this chapter is just full of POV switches as the narrative switches to Skeptic, who is in a command center of his own. Additionally, there is a satellite to be seen. Good to see Skeptic's satellites are still around. They seem to be such a big plot point during My Villain Academia. Skeptic begins to rant about being cut out of a company, most likely a security business Feel Good Inc. We see him type away furiously, surrounded by tech, keyboards, and screens. He curses the stupid decisions others have been making, commenting that he created this network from scratch, so it would be easier to hack back into. Obviously, he's referencing the tech system UA has. Strangely, the school's own system was backed by technology created by the villains. Skeptic mentions someone running away out of the country. He is clearly angry, referring to himself as the talent left behind. He continues to insult this nameless person, saying their conversationism has reduced them to a clay doll. Who Skeptic is referring to must be important. Hopefully we'll learn who it is soon enough. But regardless, the tech-affiliated villain exclaims that he will support Shigaraki and achieve Destro's dream. Like Destro, Skeptic wants to create a society where there is no quirk-based discrimination. He sees it as the only way to gain power and true freedom, a world with no heroes or villains. This mimics what All For One has said recently. In a society where everyone is under All For One's thumb, everyone is equal. And unfortunately, Skeptic does affect the hero systems. Mandalay learns that the tech support team are currently fighting off Skeptic's hack. It appears as if Skeptic is trying to get into UA's escape tunnels. Is it possible he wants to move weapons or someone else? While we can't exactly speculate on that, we can note that a support time for tech does make me think we'll see La Brava and Gentle Criminal make a return. Hopefully being Gentle Hero by then. After all, Skeptic was once hacked, and I can't think of anyone else capable of that except La Brava. While the heroes try to stop the cyber attack, Skeptic manically says All For One can do whatever he wants, Skeptic will do the same. There is also a bit more insight into the society Skeptic and Destro want. Skeptic states that the old ways will be a thing of the past after the villain's revolution. Even heroes and their followers will no longer exist in this new society. In fact, Skeptic remarks that there will be no place for them. As Skeptic says this, there is a shot of both Genist and Endeavor. Is it possible they might die in this final confrontation? Or is this simply a reference to the old ways of hero society that will be replaced by the ideals of Deku's generation? Either way, I hope we get an answer soon. Once again, we see a narrative flip to the civilians. They are all in some underground space that reminds me of a shopping mall. There is a shot of the Todoroki family and the kindergartners from the remedial course arc. The Todoroki family look concerned as they watch an interaction between the children and their teacher. She asks them to stay put because a villain could come at any minute. But the children reassure her. They are convinced Todoroki, Bakugo, and the others will win. Honestly, I was excited to see this cameo because we haven't seen these kids for so long, and it's obvious they made a lasting impact on Shoto and Bakugo, and vice versa. Meanwhile, All For One spies are in the background on cell phones. The female spy looks unbothered if not focused, while the male counterpart appears distressed. It's possible we're gearing up for villains to invade wherever the civilians are being kept. Plus, Skeptic is trying to hack the escape tunnels. If he's not moving something, it's possible he is trying to bring civilians to the fight. Whatever the case may be, it was refreshing to see the Todoroki family again, considering they all wanted to stop Dabi together. Maybe that'll happen. Who knows? Finally, we have the last point of view switch. We are brought back to the fight between All For One and the other heroes. All For One comments that the villains were trying so hard to defend themselves in the last war. Regrettably, this accomplished nothing. But now, All For One sees the final battle going a little differently. Hawks and Endeavor can only watch on as All For One begins to regenerate. Hawk seems lost for words, his expression dumbfounded. And at long last, we have a practically full-fledged All For One face reveal. I cannot begin to describe how long I have waited for this. It feels like hiding All For One's face for so long was intentional. Actually, I'm sure it was. That being said, he is a spitting image of his brother Yoichi. Around him, we see the same effects that come from Eri's rewind quirk. This visual aid all but confirms All For One is somehow using a form of Eri's quirk. Many predicted Eri would be the Deus Ex Machina of My Hero Academia, but perhaps instead, it is simply her power. Yet that isn't all For One does. He continues his speech regarding heroes and villains. He proclaims that while heroes are the protectors, this time, the villains are the invaders. It is the complete opposite of the last war. They were caught by surprise, Shigaraki still not completed. And now, the villains are fighting back with all they've got. All For One finishes with the statement that the villains will make their own dreams come true. Once more, we see the theme of dreams. Deku had a dream to be a hero, and we are seeing that All For One has a dream for a new society. The foils simply don't quit, and you gotta love Horikoshi for it. But sadly, that is the end of the chapter. We are left on another cliffhanger, but I know that the All For One fight is about to be absolute heat. There's no break this time, so we will definitely catch you next week. As always, I'm Sliceful Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching, and have an awesome day. I Love you.